A career and happiness coach came to me wanting to start a podcast. She had years of experience, a deep expertise in her field, and a genuine empathy for the people that she worked with. She knew her subject inside out. And she came to me thinking that she needed help getting set up with the tech. But that wasn't right, and realizing that changed everything. The show she eventually launched now has over 40 episodes, and the right people are listening, and she's getting inquiries from exactly the kind of clients she wanted to work with. But none of that would have happened if we'd have started where she thought she needed to. So if you're a coach, a consultant, or a senior professional who is brilliant at what you do and you want a podcast that actually reflects that brilliance and brings the right clients to you, then this channel is for you. I work with subject matter experts to build a show that doesn't quietly disappear after a handful of episodes. And I want to walk you through today the exact framework that we used for her show. Not starting with microphones or platforms, but with the 5 things that most podcast advice never touches. She came in confident. She knew her field. She had done the work for years. And honestly, that confidence wasn't the problem. Because having deep expertise and having a clear podcast strategy are 2 completely different things. And confusing them is one of the most common reasons expert-led shows stall before they ever find their audience. Most people in her position assume that the years of work means that she already knows what she's going to talk about. And they do. But knowing what to talk about and knowing why anybody should listen to them specifically is not that same conversation. The moment we stopped talking about how to start recording and started asking what she actually wanted to get out of the show, the whole project shifted. That question, what do you want to get out of this? It sounds obvious, doesn't it? But most people launching a podcast have never really answered it properly. They've thought about the topics, but they haven't thought about the purpose. Now, without that answer, every decision that follows, from the format to the length, to the guests, to the topics, is all just guesswork dressed up as planning. And the risk of skipping this is real. You can record 20 episodes of genuinely good content and still attract the wrong audience. Or worse still, no audience at all. According to data from the Podcast Index, 92% of podcasts are abandoned within the first 10 episodes. And the main reason for that isn't technical problems. It's the lack of strategic direction. Think about that for a second. Once we had that question answered, we could go somewhere most podcast coaches never take their clients. And that's where their show should actually start to take shape. Before we touched on a single technical decision, we built 6 things. And every one of them had to come before the next. This first question was her backstory. Why she ended up doing this work, what experiences shaped her expertise, and why this topic mattered to her personally. And the backstory here isn't your biography. It's that emotional permission slip that tells the listener why they should trust you with something that really matters to them. It's the difference between thinking, she sounds qualified, to thinking, she really gets me. The second question we go into is her expertise, the qualifications that she held that most people in her field didn't, the specific reasons why people would choose to listen to her over the thousands of other voices in that same space. After that, we dug into her personality, and this one surprised her. This isn't about the performance that you're going to be putting on or the different version of yourself that you're going to be putting out there. This is about understanding how she wanted her listeners to actually feel when they listen to her, and working out why her best clients already describe her in this way, and how she would translate that to her show and how she would show up on the mic. Fourthly, we really dug into the problem that she solved, those specific pain points, those questions that are keeping her ideal listener up at night, the struggles that they would never say out loud in a meeting room or a networking event, but they would absolutely be searching for privately at home at 11 o'clock at night. Once we have those things in place, we could dig into her ideal listener. And these aren't the vague demographics. This isn't their age or where they live. This is the real description of who they are, the role that they hold, the situation that they're in, and the goals that they're trying to reach. So once we had those 5 questions answered, we had one question that we hadn't touched on yet, but that suddenly felt really clear, and it determined everything about how the show was built. If you're watching this and you're realizing you haven't properly worked through these questions for your own show, and you've already started and you're feeling something's not quite right and you haven't nailed it yet, I put together a podcast clarity blueprint that walks you through these very questions that you need to make decisions on before you hit record. I've linked that in the description below, and it's free. And if you're serious about building a podcast that really works for you, it's going to save you a lot of wasted hours and a lot of wasted episodes. So most people think that the format is a creative choice. And it can be, but it shouldn't be. It should be a strategic one. And this is where a lot of well-intentioned shows get it wrong. Once you have a clear picture of your ideal listener, the format and the structure decisions essentially answer themselves. Her audience was busy career professionals, people navigating big life decisions during commutes, lunch breaks, and early mornings, fitting around their work. They weren't looking for a long-form deep dive. They needed something that they would be able to finish in the time that they had. This told us immediately that a 90-minute show was going to be the wrong call. Not because long shows are bad, they certainly serve a purpose, but because her specific listener needed something to fit around their real life. So we landed on 20 to 40-minute episode range, depending on the kind of show she was putting out. Long enough to go deep, but short enough to be practical. And then with the format question, we dug into whether solo episodes or bringing on guests would be best for her. We settled on something in between, a bit of both. But those decisions came back to her listener. What did they need to hear, and whose voice did they need to hear it from to get that real trust and that real benefit? And then the same with the structural choices, like the intros and reoccurring segments, like listener questions. They all fell into place when we stopped asking what she wanted to do and started asking what did her ideal listener need to experience from this show. What happened after all of that was in place is the part that tends to surprise people, because this is where the tech starts to show up, and it suddenly looks completely different than she expected. She came to us thinking that the tech was going to be the challenge, but at this point, it was the easy part. When somebody has a documented strategy, a clear listener profile, and the format that fits their life, those technical decisions have context, so they no longer feel overwhelming, and they're just choices that need to be made. And this is worth sitting with for a moment, because the reason so many expert-led podcasts disappear after a handful of episodes isn't the technical failure, it's that strategic emptiness. It's not having done those questions before. They start recording before they know who they're talking to. So when the motivation dips and the topics run dry, there's no foundation to return to. Nothing to go back to and ask, what is going to serve my listeners? Her strategy documentation, the work we did across all of those pillars, became the thing that she came back to every single month in her mentoring sessions with us. They kept her on point. And in her own words, the strategy and documentation really shaped the direction of the show. The brand that we put together for her really reflected her, and her ongoing guidance with us kept her getting better and better. And the worry about tech was just over. And that last part matters, not because the tech became simpler, but because she had something more important holding the whole show together. 40 episodes in, and she hasn't built just a podcast. And understanding that is what actually changes whether you should be doing this work at all. If this is landing for you and you want more like this on building a podcast that actually works for somebody at your level, please hit subscribe. I'd love to have you here. There's a lot more coming on strategy, structure, and showing up with the kind of authority that your expertise deserves. So what she built over these 40 episodes isn't just a body of content. It's a reputation made audible. The right listeners found her because every decision, from the backstory to the episode length, was made with them in mind from the very beginning. And that's what the strategy actually does. It doesn't just help you start, it helps you carry on with intention. A question worth sitting with isn't whether you've got something worth saying. I'm absolutely sure you do. It's whether the show you're imagining or the one that you've already started has the foundations underneath it to carry the weight of your expertise. Now that you can see how the foundations get built, you're going to want to know when the best time is for you to invest in podcast support. And if you watch this next video, I will talk you through that too.